And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about the Golden State Warriors and their slump so far in this season. And how should I start this off? I was right, really. That's really that's really the best way to start it off. I mean, I was never that high on Golden State. I did not like Golden State. I do not like Golden State at all because, LeBron fan here, so that makes total sense why I don't like Golden State. And I do like Steph Curry though. I don't mind Steph Curry. He's a fantastic basketball player and I do like watching him. But their start of the season when they were a top two team in the NBA, I could not believe what I was seeing. I genuinely could not believe how the Golden State Warriors, they were able to win these games and they were able to play the way that they were playing, and how Buddy Hield was absolutely ridiculous against a lot of these teams. And I just could not. It was unbelievable. It was out of nowhere that no one expected the Golden State Warriors to really be good this year, and no one expected them to win as many games as they did. But here they are going on a slump. I said before that this is probably not going to last forever. I said that this was incredible, that this seems to be like a fluke. This seems to be like shooting luck. And that the Warriors, I also mentioned how the Warriors themselves, they don't know how long they were able to keep up that ridiculous performance and how often they were able to win these games. And turns out I was right, and turns out the Warriors were right to express this concern. So over the last, over the last 5 games, they ended up losing every single one of them, and like they just had a very, very bad month towards the end of November, right? In the beginning of November, they were solid. They beat Houston, they beat Washington, then they beat the Celtics, then they lost to the Cavs, but then they continued to win against the Thunder, against the Mavericks, against the Grizzlies. Then they lost to the Clippers, and then they beat the Hawks and they beat the Pelicans. And then after those two teams, they ended up getting owned by every other team. They lost to the Spurs. They lost to the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, when they beat them, they were on a ridiculous run. The Nets. Basically, the Warriors in that game, they ended up choking. They ended up choking really bad in that game. They were up 18 points midway through the third quarter. Then the Brooklyn Nets called a timeout, and then the Nets went on a 57-29 run to seal the win. And that's embarrassing. That is a very embarrassing way to go out. Then they lost to the Thunder after beating them before, and then they lost to Phoenix, and now recently in the in-season tournament, they ended up losing to the Denver Nuggets in a very close one. Lucky for them, they still were able to clinch the in-season tournament and secure a wild card spot because they were the leading team in their group. So, it's really it wasn't a big deal, that loss, but obviously Steve Kerr is not going to consider this as not a big deal, because despite still being in the in-season tournament, this loss still counts to the regular season record. And so far right now, the Golden State Warriors, they've dropped all the way down to 7th in the Western Conference after being ranked at 2. This is mainly because the Western Conference is very, very, very competitive, and there's barely any teams that have a solid game difference between the team that's above them or the team that's below them. So it's like if you lose 2 games, you could lose around maybe 5 spots in the standings. So it's a very close. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for it being very close, much closer than it is compared to the Eastern Conference. But regardless, dropping from being 2, dropping all the way down to 7 is disgusting, and it's absolutely it's baffling. And a big reason for this slump, in my opinion, is just the inconsistencies coming in from Steph. Now, Steph is not having that much of an MVP like as good of a season as we're used to seeing him. He's only averaging 22 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. Again, not the same averages that we're used to seeing Steph Curry rock. But regardless, I mean, before it seemed like it was working, but because they weren't necessarily relying on Steph and they had to rely on the rest of the role players, I had a feeling that the success and the winning, it wasn't going to last forever, and eventually their shooting luck would run out, which was so far what's been happening in these recent games. I mean, Steph, he was the leading scorer against Phoenix with 23 points, but if Steph is leading in points and he only has 23 of them, that's most likely not going to win you a game unless everyone else is shooting phenomenally well from the field, which they did not in this game. I mean, Steph also did not really shoot well from 3 in this game either. And in the game against the Thunder, where it was relatively close, the Steph Curry wasn't even playing, so benefit of the doubt there, but at the same time, neither was Chet Holmgren. So you could argue that it was a little bit evenly matched in terms of injury status to their players. And then in the game against the Nets, which was just a ridiculous choke job coming in from Golden State, they had Steph Curry, who had 28 points, but obviously the rest of the team just was unable to follow suit in the performance, and they ended up choking the game. They just were unable to close out in that one. And then against the Spurs, where the Spurs, I mean, Victor Wembanyama, I know he's unbelievable. He's absolutely ridiculous. But Steph Curry, he wasn't the leading scorer in this game. He had only 14 points, and he was 5 for 16 from the field, and nobody else on the team was really able to bring in that offense. The team shot 37% from the field, so that's not good, and that's not going to have you win a lot of games in the NBA now. You got to be efficient. But all of these games, I mean, it's just been very it's been a very bad slump for Golden State, and it's kind of ironic how they're slumping and LeBron is also slumping as well, but that's besides the point. The next game that Golden State plays is going to be against Houston, which again, that's going to be it's going to be a very interesting game. I don't think that I'm not talking about the in-season tournament, by the way. I'm talking about the hold on just one second. I'm talking about the actual regular season games that are going to be going down, or maybe it is an in-season tournament game, but I doubt it. I doubt that it is, because the exact dates for these semifinal games are, at least right now, are a little bit unclear, and we do not have a deadline for it yet. Let me actually go ahead and check to see if they may have released the in-season tournament schedule, quarterfinals schedule, because I haven't seen it. And yeah, so the quarterfinals, they're going to start on December 10th. So not until next week. And the game that they play against Houston is going to be literally tomorrow. So this could be some good practice to get some good film in and figure out like what works and what doesn't work against this team, and depending on which team prepares a little bit better, could give them the advantage going into this game. But again, it's just a regular season game, so we'll have to see how they play against Houston. I don't think they're going to win against Houston in this matchup in the regular season, but if how do I say this? If they're able to prepare better against Houston with this loss under their belt, then they could beat them in the in-season tournament. They could beat them in the quarterfinal, because it's like, I mean, when you go up against the team and you end up losing to the team, one of the best things about losing is that you're able to learn from your mistakes, and that you're able to adapt to what you did wrong or what the other team was doing against you, and you're able to amend those mistakes, right? Like, you're able to make a difference in a game, because now you're like, okay, we lost because of this, I just don't have to do that. Or we lost because I didn't do this, I just have to do that a little bit more. Like, you can definitely get way better in the film room just by going in there and paying attention to what you did wrong. So the Warriors, they could end up beating them in the in-season tournament because Steve Kerr, he does prepare the team a little bit rather well. But again, maybe Houston is just going to have that much talent and too much talent for the Warriors to be able to handle because they are a very talented and young team. But that's all that I have to say in this fourth segment. Just wanted to bring up the slump from Golden State. And now we're going to go ahead and go into the fifth and the final segment where I talk about the in-season tournament games that took place yesterday. While the in-season tournament has already been decided, these games still count towards regular season and the regular season record. So we'll talk about that right after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.